Wednesday, word. Wednesday, word. Wednesday, word. And we are live. What's going on? Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube Live. It is your man, Coach Rowe. Today is Wednesday. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. And if it is Wednesday, you should already know what that means. It's time for the Wednesday word. That's Wednesday word. Jumping straight into it. Tonight's topic is divest from it. What do I mean? I always like to share what I mean by my topic. So what do I mean when I say the topic divest from it? First off, divest is a financial term, typically means to, instead of investing into a business, you would divest from it or take your money out of a business. But really what I mean when I say divest from it is I mean how we all have things in our life outside of business, maybe business, but outside of business that we could be a little less connected to or be completely disconnected from. And so tonight I have 3 tools that I want to share with you when it comes to divest from it. Let's jump straight into it. Tool number 1 when it comes to divest from it is divestment is not always a negative. When I actually looked up the definition just to make sure I was 100% clear on what the definition of divest or divestment is, it really was like to no longer pay attention to a business because it doesn't warrant the attention to be paid to it. So no longer to give interest, I guess, into a business. Really, I'm going to say into any situation because it no longer warrants the interest that you've been paying into it. So you divest from it. But that was just kind of like in this all around thing. Just because we choose not to pay attention to something doesn't mean that it is a negative. It doesn't mean that it's like, oh, well, you're no longer worth my time and attention, or you're no longer worthy of attention. We did a talk last night on the men's circle about self-worth. It's not necessarily you're no longer worth or you have lost a value. It's just that in the timing in which I have been paying value and attention to you, that time may have come to an end. And you can go back to many Wednesday words where I talk about the seasonality of life cycles and the seasonality sometimes of relationships. When they run their course or when they are out of season is not a time for us to be engaged with them. When they are in season, that's the best time to be engaged with them. It's no different than eating a piece of fruit. You don't want to eat a piece of fruit before it's ripe. You don't want to eat a piece of fruit after it's past its prime of being ripe and it's rotten. You want to eat it while it's ripe. And really, that's what divestment is, in the sense of it doesn't have to be a negative. This could be something that is good for you. Let's say there's a relationship that you have if you're in school, you're in college, and there's a friend that you have during the school year that maybe you don't interact with as much outside of the school year. You're great lab partners, you're great study partners, whatever that may be, but that is the nature of that relationship. And when you're not into the school, or when you're not in school, that relationship may wane off and you divest the energy and time that you normally would invest in that relationship. Also, the reason why divestment is not a negative is because it's easy to look at the numbers, especially when you're talking business. It's easy to look at the numbers and say, hey, this is not going in the direction that I want it to go. I'm going to cut my losses, divest from it, and move on and pay attention to something else, right? It's easy to look at the numbers, but that's business. I recently, even business has its own, I always struggle with this word, cyclical nature, in which there will be peaks and valleys and peaks and valleys and peaks and valleys. That's the nature of business. There's a company that I'm invested in currently. I'm not going to share the name because I'm not giving financial advice, but there's a company that I'm invested in currently. And I have a few shares in this company. And at the beginning of this year, the company's stock price was extremely low. Like, it was lower than when I bought it at. And I had to make the decision for myself. Did I want to divest the funds from that company and put those funds somewhere else where hopefully they would grow? Or did I want to leave them in the company? Fortunately for me, I left them in the company because, again, the stock price had dropped over almost 50%. Today, the stock price is above where it had dropped from, and I am now back in the positive on profits on that particular stock. Now, it's not always about value, and I think that this gives a good point, whether it's people, places, jobs, or stock. It's not always about values. It's about fundamentals. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in tool number 2, but it's about the fundamentals. I believed in the fundamentals of the actual company and that it was a sound company to have an investment in. And though their price was sliding and sliding and sliding, it didn't change my perception as far as the value that the company has for future value and future growth. And because of that, what I was able to do was, again, to make a profit. Now, think about that with relationships. It's a little more subtle than, this person has money, this person doesn't have money, right? It's a little more subtle than that. It actually has to do, when it comes to divestment, not always being about negative or sometimes about positive, has to do with alignment. There's been people in my life where I have actually severed our relationships, and they're not bad people. They're actually good people. They're great people. They're people that I admire and truly do love. But going back to understanding the season in which they're supposed to be in my life, we fell out of alignment. And once we fall out of alignment, it doesn't mean that I'm better or you're better. It just means that our connectivity is a little bit disconnected. And I had to make the decision on whether or not to further invest, which would be to get that connectivity back, or to divest and allow that relationship to come to an end. There's been times where I've done both. There's been times where I've made the investment to bring the relationship back, and there's been times where I've divested from the relationship. But either way, it's always come down to, when it comes to divestment as not being a negative thing, it comes down to what aligns with you. If things are out of alignment with you, then there's two things that are going to happen to your energy state. There's either you're going to exchange energy, right? If things are going to happen, which is you either give energy to it or you receive energy from it, or you're going to go into a neutral state. And typically when we go into a neutral state, when it comes to divestment, what that allows is the natural process of whatever connection was to take place to naturally dissolve and organically dissolve. Now, in today's dating world, they might call that ghosting somebody, right? But the reality is this: I had a really close friend in elementary school. I'm not going to say her name, but she knows who she is, and probably anybody who went to elementary school knows who she is. Was considered my best friend in elementary school. We're still in contact today, but she's not my best friend today, because that natural dissipation, I think that's the word, how you say dissipation of energy has subsided to the point where we're not playing tag on the playground every day. We're not running around. We're not going to each other's birthday parties. We're still living life. And because of social media, we still have some form of connection, but she's not what I would call my best friend. A lot of times when it comes to divestment, we look at it as a sense of failure. And I think this is why I say it's not a negative thing. We allowed that relationship to get to the point where it was at. And because we sense it as a sense of failure, often we will not divest when we are supposed to. So what will happen is a person who we knew 25 years ago, haven't spoken to in 10 years, and they come up to you and they're like, hey, I need help. And our memory plays this lovely trick. We talked about loyalty last night on the men's circle, but our memory plays this trick on us and says, you know this person. If I haven't spoken to a person in 10 years, I might know who they were 10 years ago, but I don't know who they are today. And there's a process and exchange, those two states of energy that are going to have to be exchanged in order to get that connectivity back up to where it was before the 10-year split and the dissipation of the energy. So that's tool number one. Tool number two, when it comes to divest from it, is stick to your fundamental values. Again, I told you we were going to talk about this. Our fundamentals are what drive us to make decisions. You can think about a track athlete, right? If you know anything about track, when you're coming out of the blocks, it's about your first 5 steps that will determine whether or not you're in position to win a race. Because if you get your first 5 steps wrong, probably everybody else who got their first 5 steps right have a pretty good lead, and you'd have to be extremely faster than them to catch up and surpass them in order to win. Now, some people can do that, absolutely, but the average track star or track athlete may not be able to overcome that hurdle. So stick to your fundamental values is really about sticking to who you are and why you choose to be who you are. when it comes, especially when it comes to divesting, because there have been relationships. Again, I told you that there have been relationships for me where I have put forth the effort to invest further into the relationship in order to bring it back to a state of health or in order to deepen it. But then there have been other relationships where it's been like, hey, you know what? Fundamentally, we are out of alignment. I remember I had one person contact me one time, and they were just like, hey, I don't think we should be friends anymore. I don't wish you ill will. I, wish you the best. If I see you on the street, I'm not even going to say hi to you. It's like, and it wasn't that I felt, well, I don't feel like I did anything wrong, but I was like, okay, I can respect that. Is there anything else? And they were like, no, that's pretty much it. Okay, no problem. And the reason that relationship was so easy for me to let go is because I was already in a space where I was questioning whether my fundamental values for friendship and relationship, and accountability to other men, if my fundamental values were going to be able to continue to align with who this person was becoming. Fast forward, this person showed some character that absolutely was out of alignment with who I am as a father, out of alignment with who I am as a man, out of alignment with who I am as a person. And because that was out of alignment for me, for them, or out of alignment with my fundamental values, it just further solidified that the intentional divestiture from that relationship was the right decision for me to make. Now, I could have chosen to try to fight it. Come on, man, we've been friends forever. We've been friends for a long time and all those different things. But the reality is I chose to put my energy in a neutral state and say, hey, if that's how you feel, I can respect that and I will let it be what it is. And that relationship dissolved naturally. I don't have any ill will towards that person. I hope they don't have any ill will towards me. It's not something that I think about at night or keeps me up at night. But I was comfortable with the decision that I made because I stuck to my fundamental values. Think about this. I think about this because I have a numerous amount of people who will call me with various situations, some stressful, some dramatic, some traumatic, some great, some happy, some just inquisitive. Just there's an abundance of demand on my time, my insight, and hopefully, I think my wisdom. We'll see in the long run, but I think my wisdom. And for me, my fundamental value is this: I know what I am willing to put into relationships. And if I'm going to divest from a relationship or divest from a job or divest from an activity, I am doing that with intentionality. I'm not just, oh, well, maybe I won't do it now and maybe I will do it later. I'm divesting intentionally. And so when it comes to people coming and leaning on my time or leaning on hopefully my expertise in certain areas, I always look at it as how do I feel when I leave that situation? And there's been times where people have come to me, they're like, I'm sorry, I'm dumping all this on you. I'm sorry that I'm venting. I'm sorry that I'm laying all this heavy stuff on your plate. And honestly, I don't feel that it's necessarily heavy. Number one, I've dealt with some extremely heavy situations in my own personal life. So maybe it's like a pain tolerance for what is painful to one person may not be as painful to another. If you've never been stung by a bee before, right? It might be like, oh my God, my arm is going to fall off the first time you get stung by a bee. But if you've been stung by the bee a couple of times, it might be no different than a mosquito bite. You may not even feel it. But for me, that sticking to your fundamental values, what it does is it puts you in a place to where when you divest from something or choose not to divest from something, that you are still in alignment, not in alignment with the thing that you are or are not divesting from, but you're in alignment with who you are. Because the biggest thing that not divesting when we should divest costs us is ourselves. Think about the party that you're at, right? When I was young, you're at the party and you're like, man, this really ain't even the type of party I should be at. Let me leave. But no, you stay and you hang out. I have a cousin who was shot, and it took him a very long time to get back to walking because he was at a party that he didn't really have no business being at. Somebody decided they were mad they couldn't come into the party, shot at the party, and happened to hit him a couple of times. That's what the biggest thing that costs us when we don't stick to our fundamental values is, and we don't divest when we know we should, is it costs us. Now, it might be physically cost us, it can emotionally cost us, it can mentally cost us, it can financially cost us, or it can a combination of all those things together and cause us to be lost. So, tool number 2, stick to your fundamental values. When you make a divestment, when you choose to divest from somebody, especially people, realize that some people are good in small doses and some people are not good for you at all. And it doesn't have anything to do with whether they're a good or bad person. In general, it has to do with whether or not they are healthy or unhealthy for you. So that's tool number 2. And then finally, tool number 3, when it comes to divest from it, is reinvest available bandwidth. Look, the Bible says the idle mind is the devil's playground, right? Or an idle mind is the devil's playground. The reality is this: every time we choose to divest from something, we choose to step back and or take a step back or take energy, recoup energy back. That energy has to go somewhere. It can't just sit inert for a long amount of time. And so one of two things will happen. Either one, we will find something to reinvest that energy in, and put it in that new area. Or number 2, that energy will slowly seep back into the bad habit or the behavior or the relationship or the job that you don't want to be at or you should have divested from. I've done that many of times, where actually a couple years back, where I remember, let's see, it was, I want to say April in the year, and I was unhappy at my job. I was kind of like, F this, I'm done. I need to get out of here. And what I did is I started drafting my resignation letter. This is in April. And then I then I had a conversation with my boss about the how I was feeling. Like, hey, I feel like this is just not the place for me. I'm gonna need to move on. And then I did nothing. And so I did nothing. I didn't give the letter of resignation. I didn't look for new jobs. I did nothing. I just continued to go to work. And what happened is that choice that I was making to divest and the energy that I could have recouped from that went right back into working and performing at my job. And then I stayed at the job for another 5 months before I finally just was like, I'm resigning, because I knew back in April that this wasn't the path for me, and I should have resigned back in April. I would have been further off, but I didn't. And because I didn't make that resignation choice, that energy that I had recouped momentarily flew right back into flowing into my job. So it's really important when you choose to divest from something that you reallocate or reinvest the available bandwidth that you get back from that divestiture. Other than that, I promise you, you will inherently use up the time if you don't have a plan for it. There's plenty of things that will come in either as distractions, as decoys, as detours, as roadblocks to get you to use that energy. So it's best to plan to how do you want to use that energy accordingly. And then that's really it. So that's it. Good night. No, I'm playing. Really quick, let's go over the tools for tonight. I really cannot hammer this divestiture or divest from it topic home enough, because there are so many changes that are taking place in my life, and I'm having to make choices to divest from things left and right. And I guess a bonus tool I would give you is, if you're going to divest from something, the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People says, never let what matters most be at the mercy of what matters the least. And that's what I would say, if I were to sum it up in a nutshell. When you are making choices to divest from something, make sure that you're not divesting from the positive, healthy things in your life that are actually adding growth and value to you. Make sure you're not divesting from those things. Divest from some of the things that you feel like you can get a better return of your energy and your time on. That's bonus tool number 4. But let's go over really quick the tools for divest from it for this evening. Tool number 1, when it comes to divest from it, is divestment is not a negative. It is not a negative situation because you choose to divest. You're not saying somebody's a horrible person because you choose to divest. You might be saying that, but you're not necessarily saying that. Divestiture is really about seeking and finding the alignment that works for you and works for the relationship. Tool number 2 is stick to your fundamental values. If you're going to lose yourself to the person you want to grow to be. Don't lose yourself to a person that you have no business being and you have no desire to be. Tool number 3 is reinvest available bandwidth. Again, the idle mind is a devil's playground. So if you're going to have an idle mind, or you're going to have idle energy, make sure you have a plan and a purpose for that energy so that you can put it to its best and most efficient use. So with that, with every Wednesday word, I have a personal story that I like to share when it comes to what got me thinking about this topic. And let me tell you that the thing that got me thinking about this topic is a space that I'm in currently. Even as you can see right now, I'm not in my basement doing the Wednesday word. I'm actually in a hotel room because I'm traveling. But I've been thinking for like the past season and a half that I'm reaching the point in the Wednesday word where I need to divest from it. Again, this is why tool number 1 was so important, that it's not a positive or negative thing that you choose to divest from. You choose to divest because of the alignment. I'm in a space right now where my time is extremely constrained. My time is extremely limited, and I have to make some difficult choices on where I'm going to allocate that time to, in an effort to not put what matters the least or what matters the most at the mercy of what matters the least. I have to choose what things I can do and what things I can't do. And honestly, I've been doing the Wednesday word for almost a decade now. I think actually over a decade, over a decade. Wow. Okay. So almost over a decade now. But in assessing whether or not I need to divest from it or continue to reinvest energy into it, I've made the decision that it's time to sunset the Wednesday word. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm not ever going to do a Wednesday word, but my regular weekly seasonal content for our 8 Wednesdays on, 4 Wednesdays off, I'm actually going to taper that off at the end of this particular season. So when I reach the end of this season, this will be my last official season of the Wednesday word. Then I'll just have like some, hey, I had a thought that I really thought was too powerful not to share. So Wednesday word it is. And more people will probably catch that on the replay than they would live, because I wouldn't have it necessarily scheduled as a live, like a scheduled live event. It's got to be something pretty significant. But that's what really got me thinking about this topic. And part of that, and in full transparency, is making sure that as I travel more and as I'm not in my household as much, that when I am in my household, I allocate the time that I do have to my wife. She's probably going to say I allocate the time to video games, but I allocate the time that I can to my wife, because even this month, I think we will spend maybe 10 days together out of 30. That's our 31. I don't know how many days are in August, but 30 or 31 days. We're going to spend about 10 days together. So that means 2/3 of my month is allocated to traveling. And at the times that I'm home, I really want to be focused and intentional on not only my wife and my family, but if I am going to be online right now, I feel like my heart is moving to the space of the men's circle and really, for lack of better terms, ministering to men about the challenges that we have as men, and helping us realign our masculine and feminine energies. Because I feel like we went extremely masculine at one point to where that caused the world to see us as, oh, you're invincible and you don't have feelings and you don't have emotions and you don't care about love. All you want is respect. That's what I feel like the world took. And now we need to bring into balance that, hey, we do have some feminine energies about ourselves. And I'm not talking about being overly feminine. I'm just talking about like the nurturing aspect that men have that seems to go undiscussed and untalked about or unmentioned in a lot of conversations. So that's where I'm at, where I feel like the Wednesday word has definitely served its purpose. And if you know me, you know I'm about service, but it's served its purpose. There's tons of content that I have placed out into the world. You can go back and view it anytime you would like. The Wednesday word, or the first row, will still be up as a content site. I might have to put that in my will so that it continues to be paid when I'm long dead and gone. But that will still continue to be a content site. Right now, that content will be focused, though, on the men's circle and things for men. So, ladies, if there is something that you would like to bring to the light and you need help with that, I'm happy to help. But right now, my focus is on the men and getting us where we need to be. Hopefully, we'll come back later and we'll be able to have some co-ed conversations. But I feel like we as men need to get to where we are ready for those conversations, and not to be combative and not to argue, but to be articulate and to be illuminate, to be able to illuminate others in a manner that will serve a greater good. So that's what got me thinking about this topic. Speaking about the men's circle, really quick, because I did say last night, and when I was told by the group, I I said the wrong date because I was so excited. I said we're going to have it September 16th. The men's circle is actually going to have the Men's Circles Presents Legacy. It's going to be a mini conference with up to 15 men in that conference. Appreciate you, Brother Bruce. It's going to be with up to 15 men in that conference. It's in Sacramento, California, September 24th, Sunday, September 24th. It's going to go from 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. We'll have a quick networking moment in the beginning. We're going to have a brunch, and then we're going to work on some group workshops. So if you're a man in the Sacramento area and you are looking to up your game, up your level, up your ability to build deeper relationships, and really start linking with some brothers who are looking for accountability partners and looking to be accountable to their growth, you don't want to be outside of that building on September 24th. If you would like to register for the event, I don't know why I didn't do this. I apologize. I have all this right here. Bam. If you would like to register for the event, you can go to www.1stwroe.com. That's firstrow.com, and it will land you on the page for the Men's Circles Presents Legacy. You can register. The registration form is there. We're taking payments via Venmo and Zelle. The information is in the actual form. Once you fill out the form, it will send that notification. And then once you make your payment, I will lock your space in. But yeah, there's tons and tons of stuff to come when it comes to the Men's Circle. And who knows, maybe I'll learn some things that come back to the first row from a different dynamic and figure out how to do some more in-person events. But other than that, that's everything that I have for you guys this evening. I thank you so much for your love, your support, your candor, just everything that you guys have given me over the past decade that has helped me grow as a leader in my family, as a leader in my community, as a leader in my employment or my place of employment. I appreciate you guys just so tremendously. To my wife, thank you for your support and always tuning in when you can and giving me feedback. I'm going to get off because I don't want to get emotional, but I really appreciate everything that you guys have done for me through the years. Other than that, as always, if you like this video, share it. If you share this video, please like it. I'm always happy to engage with you guys in the live chat. Happy to engage with you in the comments if you're watching the replay. But until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless. Thanks for sitting on the first row.